Čakaj.
Jaz sem majko ta majko. Ja pa moram, da se
Zdaj vidim,
ja, tako da tam.
da se štiki za nekaj, ki si izrekel, da sem pa nekaj tudi.
Fikuje.
Ja.
Okay, cool. Ampak to moram zdržati na roki, ker nimamo.
Ja, tako se pa sem za majko.
Kaj se že bil zunaj?
Pa je relativno. Pač to že od dneva.
Ja, to mi je najbolj všeč, ker začnemo, že od nekdaj ga ni.
Kaj se nas studio ni?
Jaz se nisem rekel, da spiklju, ne? Čeprav, no, zdaj. A smo live? Okay.
Čakaj.
We'll see. What? Aha, projektor se je ugasnil, verjetno.
Ja, kje?
All right, so we're live. Welcome to the third session with Amedea. Last time I forgot to introduce her, but she introduced herself quite well. So I don't think I have to introduce her again. Today we will more thoroughly focus on your progress. We'll have, let's say, about half of the session focused on what you need to do until the week after the holidays. And don't forget that during the second week after the holidays, we already have the final presentations. So please do some work this week and the week after holidays, because there are holidays in between, and of course you'll have to maybe spend some time doing other things besides all the homeworks and all the seminars you need to do. Please write us questions on Discord channel. I will read them out to Amedea and she will respond to them. You can write in any of the general channels. Don't send private messages because it's good for other people to see what kind of question you post.
Even if you have design questions or anything, and don't be shy showing your work, just because everybody is dealing with the same stuff. So, okay. Before we start with validation, which is today's topic, I wanted to ask if there were any issues in Figma for those who are here. No? Not sure? No? Okay. Okay, validation. So validation is all about lessening the risk. What I mean by that is making sure that we do not spend excessive amount of resources doing the work that nobody will care about. So how do we do that? We do it by testing. You already did some interviews. You had this initial touch with the users. And this is similar. The difference is that you actually have something to show them, something to give them to actually for them to use to test. We have two types of testing. There's concept validation and usability testing. The difference is basically when is it used and what's the purpose, and also what do we actually test. So with concept validation is we have this new idea. So we build kind of a messy prototype, something covering only the happy path, so nothing, no error states, no details, nothing such included. And we give this to users, and we're actually looking for new insight. So we're trying to find out more, we're trying to learn more, we're trying to figure out if this is something that makes sense to build a little bit more in design and then in code. While usability testing is already evaluating something, so it's either a live solution or a very high fidelity prototype. So something has been built, has some details, has error states, has flows defined, and we're checking how well is this solution working. We're doing this on a precise, so high fidelity prototypes or production, and we're basically assessing the existing stuff we have. So if you remember our honeycomb, with concept validation, we're trying to figure out, we're checking the think and feel area, while with usability testing, we're doing the use area. So with concept validation, we're checking, is this something that's desirable? Is this something that people find useful? Is there any value in our solution? Is it credible? We're trying to find new needs and figure out specifically what the direction for our product is. While with usability testing, we're testing accessibility, we're testing usability, obviously. So how well something was made, how well things are covered, are all the buttons in the right places, are all the explanations where they're supposed to be, are people seeing the instructions? So the principles that we talked about in our previous lesson, have they been kept? Any questions up to here? We validate because we, nor our bosses, nor our clients are actually the users. Even when those two fit together or seem like they are the same person, many times, most of the times, all the times, it's actually not true. We test, we validate, so we can actually talk to people and kind of confirm or I lost the word in English. How we figure out that something is not as we think it is, right? So we want to get this feedback, we want to get confirmation, and not just confirmation, but real feedback, also the critique, seeing if something doesn't work. The best thing that can happen in a validation session is that you figure out that nobody has the problem and nobody needs your solution, because that means a lot of money is saved. So this is also something that we already talked about, but it doesn't show here really nicely. We validate in this phase. So we validate when design stage is still very low, but we need a lot to learn. So we validate with things that seem not really done or thought through. We test with paper prototypes, we can test with acting out, we test with low fidelity prototypes, and then here when we're very sure, where we're making the fancy design decisions, we do the usability testing and figure out the details. So there's quite a few things that have to go into validation so that we can prepare for it. The first one is we have to prepare the guidelines, scenario, script, whatever you call it. It's very similar to the one that you prepared also for the interviews. There was a script already, there were some guidelines that you used during your interviews. So the first thing, we have to figure out what do we want to know. Are we testing a new feature, and what about that new feature do we want to test? Is it, does everybody understand how they come from point A to B? Is it, does somebody find this feature useful? So what are the things that we actually want to find out? And then, based on what we want to find out, we actually devise the experiment. So, for example, if we're testing willingness to pay, we would test it completely different than if we would just be testing, does somebody find this particular feature useful, right? Because for paying, we would, I don't know, create a landing page, we would try to get them to sign up, things like that. While with the feature confirmation, with the feature validation, we would, I don't know, create a flow, get them to use this, and then get feedback on it. Second part is we need to find users, real users, meaning the people that are actual. Why is this important? Because only in concept stage, we usually validate the content. So if the app makes sense, if the screens make sense, if the information makes sense, is it useful, is it valuable? And this we can only get from the people who actually have the problem that we are trying to solve. When we're testing basic interactions in terms of the type of menu, is hamburger better than bento menu or things like that, we can, I don't know, get people from other groups to test and give us feedback, or in the companies this looks like you pull somebody from another department, you get them to test really quickly because you want to see how people think about these features. But when we're validating content, when we're doing the real validation, then we need real users. How do we get real users? Usually, most of the time, is friends and family, and friends of friends, and family of family, and all. Even in professional contexts, this is how you get it done in the fastest way. But if you have a very specific group, then you would have to find people that will fit that description. Okay. And the third part is we need to create a prototype that fits the guidelines. So in the first task, in the first part, we created a scenario which also includes tasks that people have to do during our validation. So the whole point of validation, as I mentioned, was that you actually build something, you build user flows, you build screens, and you give a person, the tester, something that they can use, that they can click through, that they can have an opinion. And this is always based on tasks. So the tasks are the user goals that we mentioned already in the previous, last time we were together. And these user goals can be, I don't know, in Volt app, order food to this classroom, for example. And then you actually watch they go about this task, how they think about it, where they start looking for these features, etc. So we're trying not to guide them. We give them a task to do because this is also something that we as app users actually do, right? You as designers, as developers, once the app is live, you won't be able to sit with every user and tell them which button to click. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to understand how people think about what are their mental models regarding this stuff and build an interface to actually support them and not frustrate them. So creating a prototype that fits the guidelines means actually supporting those user goals with different screens. We try to fake the way user would get to the end result, meaning if we create a login screen and a person will have to kind of click through the login screen to get in, fake the login. It really is a happy flow. There are no, we don't, in this stage, we don't do, error states and forgotten passwords flows and things like that. We just do the happy flows, but we have to simulate it in the way so the user can actually perform the tasks even if we weren't there. The difference with this type of prototype is that when we start prototyping, we usually start with prototyping for exploration. So we kind of try to figure out what the screens will be, what will be the content on it. We have multiple versions of the same screen, figuring out what this content is, and then creating a prototype for testing has one flow. might be multiple same screens with just different switches, faking user reactions, and things like that. Any questions? All good?
I may ask one question.
Mhm.
Database, how do we have any database of data or do we need it?
That's a good question. So with each scenario, you create kind of a story, right? So you always have the same data that, for example, if we would be testing a Volt app, we would say, okay, you need to order Peking duck at restaurant this and this, so we can create this happy flow, and user can understand where to click and kind of what to lean on in the interface, right? So because it's really, we would have to use another tool to actually prototype this, to actually have a database behind, so we could do the very production-like testing. But for concept validation, this is enough. Faking the happy flow is enough. Okay, so now we have all our stuff ready, and we actually have to do the validation. First, we need to prepare everything. We have to also think about the setting. Sometimes it makes sense, for example, if you're doing a business app, I don't know, for example, a medical app or a medical device app, it makes sense to actually test it in a doctor's office so you can actually see how they operate in their space and how this fits in. But for most cases, this is either setting up time and space, setting up equipment for recording, or sending off the Zoom link and the Figma link to the prototype. Similar to how user interviews were, also here is important that you record stuff so you can actually go back and watch what actually happened. For archive, for just being, like, you have no idea how many stuff we miss if we don't go through recordings, again, because we like to hear what we already think is true. And this goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. You always introduce yourself to the user. You explain who you are, why you are here, why they are here, what's the purpose of it. And very important, you have to tell them that we're not testing them, that we're testing what we have done. And we invite them a lot to actually provide us feedback, and that they can be and should be critical of our work, because we need this to make the stuff better, or even, I like to say, to see where we were wrong. And when people are invited to provide this kind of feedback, they get very generous with it, which is a good thing, because that's why we're there. The next thing we have to do, we have to put our users into context, which basically means we have to tell them where they will be so they can imagine where they are using this app. So for example, if we were testing, I don't know, new Spar delivery app or shopping app, would actually, we probably wouldn't test this at precise point when somebody has to do the shopping, but we would tell them, imagine you're at home, you have to do 1 month worth of shopping for the main groceries, and then people can actually put themselves in their shoes at that precise moment, and they start thinking, oh, this is how I usually feel like at that point. This is what I have to do most of the times in that situation. And only then you can actually get real feedback, because it's about thinking for them, where do they use it, what kind of mental state they are in, what proves valuable to them, what are they thinking usually about at this stage, and you kind of want that information to actually understand where does this go on. And then after you put them in the context, you actually guide them. Guide may be a bad word here, but you tell them the first task that they need to achieve. So the task is usually the user goal. So what is the end result? Order the food from this restaurant. So based on what you're trying to test, what you need to test, what you need to find out, you create those tasks. And as I said, we're trying not to guide them during the test. So we're not telling them, please click here and then click here, because that gives us nothing. That's like we talked the previous time, that's a presentation, not a prototype. They actually have to use it on their own. And even if they hit a roadblock of some kind, you always ask them, what is another way you would go about this? Or if they ask you, like, what do I have to press next? You ask, what do you think? And you get them to think about the flow a little bit more, and again, you're getting feedback. Find their way out, or if there's something wrong with the prototype. Which means also that it's really good. We talked about this with interviews. We usually test interviews, so we know what kind of answers will we get. And it's really useful to actually test the testing. So the testing scenario, test the prototype, so you actually see if there's something wrong with the prototype, if some kind of link doesn't work, if the tasks are too broad, or just any kind of this feedback for you as a test provider, maker. So you can fix this without losing quality time with actual people. And of course, yeah. What? Okay. And of course, we ask our users to share their thoughts while they go through the app. So they speak because we cannot hear their thoughts, right? We ask them to share their thoughts while they are clicking through the interface. You ask them to tell you what they are seeing, what they are thinking. Again, trying to get as much possible information as you can. You see, and here is a prototype that doesn't work. Just the last slide. Are there any questions up until this point about testing, validation? Okay. So, I'm going to go quickly through all of it, and then we'll decide if we'll close down the live streaming or not. So what will we do here right now is prepare for validation. So the first thing you will do is you will write down 5 goals your users need to do inside your app. So that goes for your projects. What does the user need to do? What do you actually need to test? Are there features that you are building or that you are proposing that need to be validated? Are there flows that need to be improved? What is the thing that you will do? Second part is you choose one of the goals and draw the screens. Getting from a scenario to the prototype usually involves building different screens because these are flows. So here we have an example. If we need to order food, first you have to choose a restaurant, look at the menu, pick a dish, review delivery information, you need to pay, and then you have an order confirmed. And that's basically at least 2 for 6 screens that we actually have to build and design to actually test this concept. So, for homework, you will have to write down the testing scenarios. There's an example here for a website test, which you can use and abuse to your liking. So you can base it on that. You prepare then the prototype according to the scenario. So having the happy flow covered, meaning user can actually perform the tasks by themselves. You find testers. Depending on how many people is in your group, as many people as in the group, as many people need to test. So if there's 4 of you in the group, that's 4 people testing. You do the testings, and then you debate what have you learned from the tests. Okay? That should be done by 8th of January, which is our next session together. So there will be 4 hours left only for consultation, so we won't have any, I won't be talking as much. And then on the 11th, we have the presentations. During the presentations, which every group will have 5 minutes for, which is nothing, you will have to tell us which project you were working on, who was your user. You will show us your testing prototype and what did you find out in testing. And here, make yourself proud, or how they say. You can also, when you test, you can upgrade your designs. You can make it splashy. Anything else?
All right. Does my sound work? All right, great. So as Amedea said, next week there's holidays, and of course you'll have other obligations with regards to your family and a bunch of other homeworks, I guess. The week after, the 1st and the 2nd, I think, are holidays as well, like Monday and Tuesday, which basically means we won't have the live streaming session, but we will make ourselves available on Discord. Please write into general channels, not private messages, because if you have a question, somebody else has a question. Probably the same one, okay? Because there's 120 of you. So please write questions into general channels. If needed, I'll also make myself available next week. If you want to work on your task and have any questions, we can do short video calls. And during this week from the 2nd to the 8th, I think, something like that, or the 7th, we'll also make ourselves available. If you have any questions, post them. Amedea will respond. I will respond. We might have some short video calls. I will also be available in this classroom, PR14, through all the lab sessions. The only one officially online is on Friday. I had only a few students on Friday, but if somebody needs an online session instead of in-person session, let me know. On the 11th, we have the final presentations. A few days before that, you will post your final product, your maybe a bit more polished prototype, onto Chilnica. And 5 minutes is the maximum of the presentation. So don't make it a PowerPoint presentation, make it a Figma presentation, okay? There is no need for you to make another PowerPoint. You'll have enough of that with other lectures, I guess. As far as I remember my own lectures with other subjects. 5 minutes per group is more or less a hard deadline because we're going to have like about 45 groups. So there's going to be a lot of presentations, and 5 will be max. Maybe we'll even shorten it a bit. We'll let you know about it. But we'll have to be really quick and really swift. So I will be opening up Figma on a separate computer. You won't have to bring your own device because otherwise we're just going to lose a lot of time, connecting and disconnecting cables. Please make it as best as possible. Please don't try to please my assumptions. Please, assumptions of your user. I'm just the product owner. I might not agree, but you have to persuade me why you figured out something is important for the user you're targeting. You don't have to change the whole application, but you are allowed to change the whole application. You're working on your own new version, which will solve all the problems in the world, okay? And please, if you have any questions, please come to the consultation lab sessions this week. Let me know if you need any help next week. I'll make myself available, although you'll probably be on holidays. But because there are holidays, please make the best of your time this week and the week after the holidays, the New Year. Otherwise, we'll continue individual questions here. If anybody has an additional question on Discord, so far there was none, please write it down. We can also make a quick video call via Google Meet behind. Otherwise, thank you everybody who've been watching the live stream. Thanks to Amedea for helping us out with tons of her experience. And remember, this is a playground. You can fail. It's no problem. It's much better if you try something and doesn't work in this classroom instead of when you're already employed and you have a job and €1 million project or whatever. Okay? So you can go a bit further. You can be more extravagant compared to maybe your regular jobs. And please do that. Don't try to please me, try to please the user, okay? Thank you. Thanks to everyone who were also in person during these sessions here. Consultations lab sessions are available to you, and please visit them and see you around. We will now, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Will the presentations be in Slovenian?
The presentations can be in Slovene if you're Slovenian, but we have a lot of Erasmus students, so of course make them in English or German or Italian or no, just kidding. Just make them in English, okay? Please. Yeah, and thanks everybody. We'll shut down the live stream now, and we'll continue with individual questions in class here. If anybody has a question while watching the live stream, please reach out on Discord channel. Thank you.
All right.